Call in from that one.
Yeah, I gotta get that. If I pop in here real quick.
No, sure, please.
I'm sorry.
Welcome to GoToWebinar. Webinars made easy. Please enter your access code followed by the pound. To enable audio control, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash key. If you do not have a PIN,
Smart sheet. Dropbox, right?
welcome to the webinar.
Smart sheet.
You can enter that as an organizer. You may now
Collaboration. Schedules.
Working.
The small packages for you. I sign all the things. So you remember how you you can feel like a project plan, and Jamie touches it, and she sends it in Excel to you.
Testing. Can
Nice.
there you are, ready for takeoff. Yeah, I think you.
I got it. All right.
Hey,
Good afternoon, everybody.
We're not started
I
yet,
know,
but
know.
yeah, just
Testing in my language here.
Yep.
Good.
Get
Get used to it.
Can you hear me?
he should be able to hear you.
Oh, can you
I can hear
I can hear you. Pilot to co-pilot. Check with.
Right,
Right rudder 4.
Is there a backup just in case, Bruce? Or if one dies, should we just go to speakerphone?
If one dies, yeah, I would say speakerphone.
Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear through this, like back feed.
Yeah.
She's not.
Yeah. Let me mute myself, and then you shouldn't be able to hear me.
Okay.
You're right. Now, where were you coming through? Oh, I see. That's a mic.
Already dialed in. Screen is already being showed, but we're not broadcasting yet. So as soon as you guys are ready, once you're in the captain's chair, all you have to do start broadcast.
Oh. So yeah, it's wait 1 minute. Yeah. Okay.
Wait 5 to 10 seconds after we put that start broadcast button. And then for you.
Dave can start. Okay. Good.
Are people on now? Should I tell them we'll be starting shortly? I know, but it is at
It's
1 o'clock.
12:59.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. A minute after that, everyone does. Right. Middle of lunchtime. Ever do these in the afternoon, or have you ever played around with like a 4 o'clock time or anything to see? Yeah. 1. Yeah, I do. Oh, interesting.
We actually used to do them on
Friday. Right. Yeah. Showtime.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Hi, my name is Dave Kassar with MBO Partners, and welcome to this month's Independent Consulting webinar series titled workflow and time management tips for the self-employed workforce. Again, presented by Perry Pockros. Again, my name's Dave Kassar, and hopefully you can see me there on your screen. That's who I am. And I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Solutions for MBO Partners. We thank you for joining today. We have quite a few people in attendance, so I thought we would do a quick introduction of who MBO is. MBO Partners is an independent consulting business platform that makes it easy for self-employed professionals and their clients to work together. We've been in business for 25 years, handling back office support and services for independent contractors and small businesses, like many of those on the call today. If you want more information about MBO, visit our website at www.mbopartners.com. For those less familiar with the GoToMeeting application, we'll give you a little housekeeping items here. There's a full screen icon, so you can enlarge the presentation to your full screen. It's that blue icon with the arrows. Just push on that, and you can push on it again to decrease the size, make it convenient for you. The chat box in the lower part of the table is where you can enter questions for the presenter. And we will try to include your questions as we go through the presentation, but if not, we'll try and capture them all at the end during the question and answer portion of the webinar. As always, we'll conclude in the scheduled hour. Today, please follow us on Twitter, #MBOWeb, and you can also submit questions through Twitter if you'd like. So now to introduce Perry. Perry has more than 30 years experience in public sector consulting, government management and operations, and public policy analysis. He's led public sector consulting engagements for PricewaterhouseCoopers, IBM Global Business Services, and Hagerty Consulting. Prior to his consulting career, Perry was a professional staff member for more than 10 years in the U.S. House of Representatives for standing committees and members of Congress. For the last year, Perry's been an independent consultant and facilitator working with the U.S. Agency for International Development, the Department of Defense, and District of Columbia's Executive Office of the Mayor. So today, Perry will be sharing with us an abbreviated training workshop he developed to enhance personal, organizational, and productivity. As Perry has observed and reminds his clients, things get stuck because the doing of them has not been defined. So with that, take it over, Perry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, David, for that introduction. For everybody on the webinar, thank you for setting aside part of your Wednesday to join us in a discussion to kind of address those things. I bet many of you have complaints about there's never not a time to get work done, that between the interruptions, emails, and taskers that frustrate your best intentions to work through your to-do list, which is a world of just increasing volume and ambiguous to-dos. My primary objective today is really to talk to you about ways to transform what I call stuff, things that come into your life, mainly on the work front, to try and organize them and process them. I'm really going to focus on two key principles, and that is capturing all the things that you need to get done into a logical and trusted system outside of your head and off your mind, and secondly, into a disciplined system to make front-end decisions about all the inputs in your life so you can process and organize them into a coherent next actions queue. Finally, I'm going to conclude today's presentation with a brief overview of some collaboration tools that I use in some of my client settings, and as well as an overview of two web-based applications that I use as well. This course is primarily structured around many of the practices and theories authored by David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done, and I'll note that as we go through today's presentation. Okay, I know we're all busy people. In fact, Americans are the busiest people around, and we intend to be proud of it. But it really does present a paradox in that while we have an enhanced quality of life, at the same time we're adding to our stress levels by taking on more than we have resources to do. Many studies have shown that about more than 36% of Americans don't plan to use all their vacation days. A third of all employees report feeling chronically overworked. More than 40% of people work more than a typical 40-hour work week. And as independent consultants, and we are free agents, we know that we no longer have clear boundaries on that. So really our conundrum we face a lot of sort of the big picture, our goals and values, what we want to accomplish, balanced against the day-to-day distractions and emails that confront us. Let me suggest that you just take a moment as we begin this presentation, if you have a piece of paper, just to jot down a project or a situation that is most on your mind. Just think about what bugs you, what's distracting you, or your interests that in some way are consuming a larger part of your conscious attention. Just think about it good, because now, if you can describe this in a sentence, I want you to think about what you would have to happen for you to check this project off as done. That is, have you written down the next very physical action step required to move the situation forward? If anything has happened, through this process, it's probably because you have a clear definition of the outcome desired and the next action required. But really what created that? I think the answer is going to be thinking, not a lot, just enough to solidify what your next step commitment is and the resources that you need to fulfill it. In today's presentation, I just want to introduce also two concepts that you'll hear we talk about quite a lot. One is workflow. Workflow is a noun. It really means a sequence of processes through which a piece of work passes through initiation to completion. And time management is the act or process of planning and exercising conscious control over the amount of time spent on specific activities, especially to increase efficiency, effectiveness, and productivity. So clearly, workflow is about sequencing processes, and time management, the emphasis is really on the conscious control of the way you spend your time. Okay? Why things are on our mind? Well, the reason something is on our mind is that we want it to be different than it currently is. Your mind keeps reminding you of things when you can't do anything about them. In fact, if we had innate intelligence, our mind would remind us of the things we needed to do only when we could do something about them. I like to think of, the example when you run out of batteries in the household, your AA and AAAs, you make a mental note, oh, I need to get batteries, and you walk by, the local pharmacy, the CVS, Radio Shack for 2 weeks, and you forget to buy batteries. If we had innate intelligence, our mind would say, remember, I need batteries all the time. But what we do have is something I'll call psychic RAM, just like a random access memory in a computer. And it lets our mind really kind of run lots of the show, especially when there's a much to-do syndrome concern. And I assume, many folks wake up in the middle of the night thinking of things they need to do. They're anxious. Think about times you're in a meeting when your mind drifts off on your next to-do list, an action to take, and it distracts you from being present. So it's really not until those thoughts have been clarified and the decisions made and the resulting next steps have been documented in a disciplined system that you know and will act as your conscious to remind you that your mind will continue to cycle back to this anxiety-inducing issue and won't let it go. So where are we trying to get our state of mind really here? Well, if you can reflect for a moment on what it actually might be like if your personal management system were totally under control and at all levels. If you could dedicate fully 100% of your attention to whatever was at hand at your own choosing with no distraction. You could experience what martial artists call mind like water, or what some of the top athletes really refer to as the zone. Each of us have probably been in this state from time to time. It's really a condition of working, doing, and bringing in which the mind is clear and focused on, and constructive things are happening. And really to get us there, we're going to talk about downlighting all your open loops, that is all the collection things that are going on into a trusted system, to identify those commitments, to figure out the next steps, to transform stuff, to tailor what I mean a leak-proof system is something you have confidence in that you've collected everything that ideally will result in more relaxation and increase productivity here. Let's take a look at some 3 defined categories of work here. And all of us as consultants, you may appreciate kind of bunching these into kind of the bounded descriptions here. Predefined work is really what we do. We're working off our to-do list or next step list. It's really essentially completing work that we've previously determined needs to be completed within a time frame. This could include, making and returning calls, attending meetings, reviewing your flagged mail to figure out what to do with it, and sending your completed draft to the next person in a process. Work as it appears. This is where when we wake up in the morning and we ask ourselves, what's my day going to be like? What's going to enter my inbox today? Every day brings surprises, and it's the ad hoc incoming of email requests, taskers, drafts, meetings, comments, unanticipated instructions for people's calls, voicemails that we all need to please and juggle all day long. And sometimes we juggle this literally. And these are the things that we need to make front step actions on what we're going to handle them, when we're going to get back to them, and seem to be overwhelming us. Third is really defining this work. So as to appears, we want to try and place it somewhere in a trusted system so that we can really review the activities and move it into our predefined work queue. And so we'll be discussing this in terms of either a daily and weekly review process. We are triaging our email, listening to voicemail, reviewing meeting notes to figure out next steps, and putting it into some sort of process on a paper, electronically, or a calendar, and get it off of your psychogram. Remember here, really the key in today's presentation is managing all the stuff, is managing your next step actions. And what you do with your time, your information, really will help focus your priorities here. Okay, 3 key principles and behaviors in getting things done category. Getting things done really means collecting and transposing things in your psychogram through a conscious process of capturing, identifying, and reviewing consistently so you can put it where it belongs in your self-management area. The first step is really collecting and organizing things through buckets. Buckets are your mental containers that you hold to organize the way you interact with the world. These mental containers could have large apertures, such as they could take in a lot of material into a container labeled personal stuff, work stuff, and obviously under work stuff there's a lot of different categories. But to begin with, our focus is really creating and using the whole idea of work buckets to hold items in abeyance until you have a quiet time to decide what they are and what, if anything, you're going to do about them. As Dave said in the introduction, deciding on next steps in an actionable queue is really clear because things get stuck because doing them has not been defined. So it's very important to think about and note what the next physical step is to keep things moving. Finally, recall that the purpose of workflow management is really to gain a sense of calm, this mind like water, to engage in productive activity. And so you need to be assured that you're doing what you should be doing. And reviewing your system on a regular basis to update appropriate action choices is a key part of this cycle. Okay. 5 key phases in workflow. Okay, and implicitly many of us go about this on a daily basis. Collecting, first of all, those things that command our attention. Processing what they mean and what we need to do about them. Organizing is really thinking about the results. What is the real outcome that I'm intended to achieve by this activity here? Reviewing what are the options for what we need to do and how we're going to choose the next step that fits both our time availability, energy level, and priority. And finally, executing it, getting it done here. I think one of the reasons many people haven't had a lot of success with getting organized is that they simply tried to do, in a sense, all 5 of these things at once. For example, if you sit down to make a list of to-dos, you're probably trying to collect the most important things in some order that reflects priorities, but without setting out many or really any real actions to take. If you don't decide initially what action to take, it may become an open loop, taking up lots of your conscious RAM space. Now let me walk through, this is the overriding decision model tree designed by David Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. And I want to spend a moment providing you an overview of the way these categories work, talk about the 8 categories on the rim of the diagram in purple, and then I'm going to spend time in the next few slides getting in more detail on how this process works. Again, so this is a mental model, and so stuff comes in, lots of stuff. You can think about it on your email, phone call, leaving home today, mail that comes into what I'll call your in-basket. So it's got your conscious attention. You're asking yourself, what is this thing? And the first question is it actionable? What I mean by that is it's something that I can do now or needs my attention. Kind of the first decision cue is, no, it's not actionable. It's actually something I could trash or delete. So one of the lessons we'll get into here in email management is be aggressive in using your delete button, and while you're at it, use your unsubscription button as well. Second category is sort of the same day maybe. Hey, this is something of interest. In fact, maybe when this webinar was sent over on your email 2 weeks ago, you noted in your head, hey, this may be something I want to attend on Wednesday the 20th, but let me see what I'm doing on that data, but I sure want to file it somewhere. So someday maybe things are of potential interest. They can be aspirational type objectives, such as I'm thinking of going to graduate school. I need to plan my summer vacation for next August. You need a place to nest those things in a category so they don't interfere with your attention and you can review them. Third category is a reference. Is this something that I want to refer to in the future? Now, we've changed a little bit because many times we're sent PDF documents and other reports where we used to have to collect files and hold on to them in a filing reference system. Now with more things web-based, we don't have to hold on to digital copy as much. We can go back to a website. But depending on the project that you're in, or it could be a personal project, again, using the vacation example, or doing a specific client project, it may be reference materials that you want to keep somewhere. Let's go back to the actionable question here. Is it yes? So if this is something actionable, what's the next action step? I want you to think of sort of the following 5 buckets. We'll start on the project bucket on the left here. So in organizing your incoming, your stuff, many of us consultants, work in project-based activities. Those projects can be business development. You can have proposals going on. Those projects can be a networking type thing, or they can be really defined client project with discrete deliverables. And so you want to have a set of buckets that is sort of a project hierarchy with specific projects, and then underneath that there may be project plans, things like Gantt charts, budget estimates, time and expense reports, that sort of thing as a separate nested to-do list. So that's putting things sort of in a project type bucket. When I run this as a interactive workshop, I actually make people sit around and think of things that are on their mind and go through an exercise of what budget bucket does this fit into, and it really helps them kind of organize the way they see the world. And the thing that's important about this is you need to tailor it for your specific kind of organizational role. Let's keep moving down to what I think the real critical issues are in terms of managing both workflow and time sequence. What's the next action step? Will it take less than 2 minutes? Well, David Allen came up with the 2-minute thing. That's yes, do it immediately. Answer that email. I kind of say, 3 to 5 minutes. I'm a little slower. Well, I'll talk a little bit about an email approach that I use to do it. But if it's something that's going to take a little longer, and this is where we really need to think about our next action steps, no, I can't do it right now. Question 1, should I delegate it? Is this something that someone else should work on? Now, because we're independent consultants, typically we're probably working laterally or upwardly with clients, and so we may not be in a delegation type role. When I teach this more to executives or senior managers, I encourage them to think about delegating a number of things to the direct reports, and then it becomes something that you're waiting for someone else to do. But in a sense, if you have reached out to someone to set up a networking meeting or something, and they've come back to you and said, we're going to schedule a meeting, this is a logical place where that would go. You're waiting for that individual or organization to get back to you with a confirmation on a meeting date or a next step follow-up. Moving over, something to defer, a calendar item or a next action. We're going to talk specifically about calendars. To manage your workflow, you really need to get aggressive in using your calendar on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. We'll talk about some tactics about looking at that for day-specific actions, and also really kind of time blocking on a monthly basis, weekly basis, and daily basis. And finally, the most critical one is next actions as soon as I can do it. And this is where all of that work it as it appears comes in happens for you, where you need a really actionable checklist that says what are things I need to get to today, tomorrow, by the end of the week, a categorization of what are the types of things I need to do next to these. It is a call, an email, a review, create an agenda. So I'm going to get in much more detail on how this model flows. Any questions at this time, feel free to submit them to us, and we'll handle them as they're submitted. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide here. Okay, collection buckets. So again, I referred to collection buckets as your mental containers for holding everything out of your head. I mean, get your ad hoc notes into some sort of containers. Again, at the highest level, these collection buckets could be, email or web applications. You want to try and have a sufficient number of buckets, but not too many to collect your information. And so first of all, think about all the ways you're collecting stuff that comes into your life. It could be email, paper, space notes, telephone, personal communications, your psychic RAM. And then you want to begin to get these in a single place or one or two places where you get it out of your head. You have sort of a minimal number, a sufficient but necessary number of organizing buckets for your information that you're going to review, empty them, or rearrange the queue consistently, ideally on a weekly basis. And other thing to remember is, for many of us, our best ideas about work will not come to you at work. They will come to you when you were on a weekend, you were walking in the morning, you were at the late night walking the dog or taking a run. Keep that in your mind, get it in the house, get it on a Post-it, and get it into your trusted system so you don't forget it. Okay. Is it actionable? So let me just review this again. This is, processing information as it comes into your initial in-basket, if you will. Two binary choices, yes or no, right? If it's no, this is not something that I need to work on, delete or discard it. It's not ripe for action yet, but it's not totally useless. Better hold it for future consideration, or something that I call incubation. This may be something what I want to work on. And finally, if it is something potentially relevant to a project or future information, I'll keep it in a future references type bucket here. If the answer is yes, it is something actionable, you want to ask yourself, what is it, the project or outcome that I've committed to? Capture it on a project list as an action item relating to the completion of the next right step, or either transfer it to a master project or project planning list to keep you moving forward on that project. Okay. If it's a, again, next action step, do it immediately. If you can do it right now in a couple minutes, delegate it or defer it later if it's going to take you longer in the day with a notional time frame on when you want to get it done. Okay, organizing step is really, walking through the mental process as well of keeping supporting materials and references in your projects, doing if it takes less than 2 minutes. Let me talk a little bit about the calendar action items here. So on your calendar, you want to use it for time-specific actions such as meeting. Use your calendar for day-specific actions as a reminder something may be due. There's a trigger happening for this day, or either just general information is happening. So you can use calendars for the daily reminder, because we're going to talk about time blocking at a monthly basis so you can really get your sense of how much time and workflow you have to do it as well. I've talked about delegating to someone else to complete and respond, and to defer to subdivide in the next physical steps with or without a time frame here. Okay. Finally, the someday maybe list is sort of a later tickler file if you want to remind yourself about items that you want to schedule in the future or make sure that you follow up on. Okay. Let's talk about sort of the end of this process of reviewing your queue. And so two things that I really suggest you think about is sort of the daily review. At the beginning of your day, checking your calendar, recall your appointments and day-specific information. Figure out your discretionary time and examine what sort of next steps match that available time to completing one or more of your action items, either as a next step action item or a project. And review your list as much as possible to get stuff off your mind. what I like to do is, begin my day triaging emails and calls, look at my project list, but I have a mental game plan. And I like to time block my day, if not week, to do like activities and stick with that schedule. What I mean with that is the way we focus better is if we're editing in an editing cycle, I do my editing and writing best in the morning. And so I intentionally push things like following up on emails or phone conversations and other administrative activities to later in the day where I have a different kind of energy and attention level. And so I'll bunch editing related responsibilities in the morning, for instance. On a weekly basis, it's very important, say on a Friday or Monday, unless you actually want to work on your Saturdays or Sundays, to really review your entire queue and buckets to see where things are. This is the way you become more relaxed and you have assuredness that what you're working on is the right thing to work on. To update those lists and what I call get clean, clear, current, and complete. Okay, acting and executing. Now it's actually time to do the work on your list. And you need to use your judgment in assessing these criteria and decide whether to tackle, predefined work that's cleaning up stuff from your next action items, or doing ad hoc work as it shows up throughout the day or through the week. And you really want to ask yourself, how much time do I have available? What kind of energy level do I have right now for tackling this action? Do I have the appropriate information available to complete it? And finally, how important is the action and how long it's been in my to-do and queue list here? Okay. Here's some tactics that I've kind of thought about and maintained and have worked with people on for a while. First of all is, maintaining a roster of your daily and weekly tasks similar to Visible. This is where you can use in Gmail, for those who may know, there's a new task list feature. I encourage you to take a look at Gmail Labs periodically for new things. Individuals I coach sometimes develop Word or Excel documents on their desktops as well to continue tracking and flowing information throughout the day. Another action is to organize your email folders. So whether you're using Outlook or Gmail or Lotus Notes, you could actually create sub-email buckets. I call them at action or at waiting for. So if you come back from a series of meetings and your inbox has got, 21 pending emails to read, as you go through them, you can triage them and actually move them into follow-up action items or waiting for folders to review for future reference. As I mentioned, I think one of the things that we need to learn is multitasking is not a good thing. We do not do that well. In fact, we do it poorly. And we should really think about grouping similar activities together throughout your day. Emailing, editing, phone calling during blocks of time. Again, this is where you kind of create a mental game plan that allocates a rough amount of time without interruptions or distractions to really complete these action items. And so on my calendar, I will proactively put, if I know on a Thursday I have quiet time between 2 and 4, I'll put on there a particular busy sign and a couple things that I intend to get done. And I really want to stick to that schedule. This is a good way for, again, as consultants, you should have a rough estimation of how long things are going to take. And you should use that, both experience and intuition, to set up 2-3 hour blocks to complete deliverables, follow-on projects, setting on agendas, that sort of thing. And finally, one rule here, only handle it once. The abbreviation is Ohio. And, what I think drives many of us crazy sometimes is when we repeatedly have to do something. I think a good example is consultant invoices. I like to have all my information together. But ideally, whether it's a document, an email, a voicemail, returning it over and over again is not a good use of time. Try to handle something once, which means you want to think about what are the next right steps to push this through a completed or to-do action item. Email tactics. I know many of us are overwhelmed by email in this day and age, and I first want to ask yourself always, is email the best medium? Many times, email may not be the best method of communication. And my friend Jamie's over here, when she sent me an email 2 or 3 months ago about hosting today's webinar, I did not email her back. I picked up the phone and called her, because in my mind, I thought it was worthy of a conversation to really flesh out what this was. So first of all, many of us default to email. Ask yourself first, is a conversation not better? Okay? But we get a lot of email. Many of us have 2, 3, 4 different accounts. Get your inbox to empty. What I mean is, when you come back to your inbox and you look at it, go through all your emails quickly to do a mental triage. I ask people all the time, when you get an email from someone, do you prioritize it? Well, they say, if my boss is for my boss, yeah, I look at that first. If it's something priority, sure. You're going to open an email from a client or a person before you open the Amazon email that all of us get daily. But you want to, go through it and then triage in your head and get a sense of priorities to respond to it. While I'm on this, for those of you who haven't already, whether you're using a BlackBerry or an iPhone or your desktop, turn off the noise that you get when an email comes in. Whenever we hear a ding, a new communication, our neurons and synapses start twittering and say, I need to know what that is. We need to know what that is, the distraction. Better to have quiet email come in. Take a look at it every 60 or 90 minutes if you need to, if you're getting a lot. Triage it and then figure out your next steps with each one. One of the things I've been, working on that I do for responding to emails and sometimes originating them is beginning to construct them in a separate Word document. And once I triage my list and I know I got to send back about 4 different emails, and if they're kind of similar in context, I can write a kind of foundational paragraph that I might copy and paste to several people in that and change specifically depending on if I'm managing or facilitating a group of individuals. But more importantly, many times people begin responding to an email and the phone rings, another email comes in, they send it accidentally, they forget the attachment, there's misspelling, it's not professional. So if I can spend 20 minutes, crafting 4 good email responses that I can both spell check and word check, and then in my head be clear on, am I sending attachment here and which one is it, I can then quickly go back into my email, copy and paste, set up my to-do and CCs, and let it go. And again, it builds in, for me, better quality assurance and control as a consultant that my emails are professional and well received on that. Use actionable subject descriptions. Many of us are very bad about this. Use the subject headers in all your email to be very specific and actionable. November 20th draft attached, review and edits required Friday, November 22nd. If you're using Gmail, feel free to change the chained dialogues, the threaded dialogues that occur with Gmail. Many times, it starts off about, on a Monday, and by Friday there's 15 people have commented on it. Each one of those threaded dialogues should have a changed subject on it. Again, finally, use your delete key. Try and clean out that inbox to get it to empty, and while you're at it, unsubscribe to stuff that you don't want to receive. Okay. Some other email tactics. Remember that, to versus the CC field. And we're going to introduce you a little bit later to this concept of the RACI framework, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Be very discerning about your use of the to field versus the carbon copy field. I mean, in my mind, designate the to field to the person who has the action. Who's the owner here? Who's the responsible party individual for moving that thing to the next step? Okay. CC is really for, information to keep someone informed on it. The second kind of rule here is never reply to all. I know many of us have been in organizations. We see lots of people to do it. I coach individuals. If you find yourself on a reply to all chain, feel free to have a conversation with the author. We want to reduce the number of emails. Consider using NRM, no reply necessary. Many times in organizations, and we do a lot of FYI. Did you hear about so-and-so? And all of a sudden it starts and ignites, commentary, editorial comment, political views. It's just an FYI. You just want to so feel free to say, thank you very much, no reply necessary, and then sign your name. Many times people ask me, how do I communicate? Like, I always think everything has to be done immediately. Try and both socialize and communicate both behaviorally, verbally, of when you're receiving an action, an expectation for when that action will be completed. Tell people, many folks forget that all of us have a predefined work queue, and that when they come up with an ad hoc request, they expect it to be done almost immediately. And I think it's appropriate to tell them, I have a structured, product I'm working on, my calendar's set, and I plan to get to you back, a day or two later in a particular time frame. Okay, excuse me. For those of you who are paper-based, this is sort of a structure for setting up a Getting Things Done notebook that I'm just going to quickly let you look at the categories, because I want to move into the electronic one very shortly. And you'll find more of this in the Getting Things Done by David Allen. Okay, let me give you an overview of some of the Getting Things Done application and tools. Many of us use Google, Gmail now, Outlook as well. Consider using, boxes and categories, multiple labels to structure your buckets. And again, with Gmail task lists, you can have multiple task lists now in your Gmail. And if you're not sure where that is, in the top left corner on your Gmail, when you click on that, it says Mail, Calendar, or Task List. Go to that task list, and you can open it up. It'll stay in the bottom right corner of your desktop. And you can begin to use that task list to capture next step action items, follow-up action items. You can have multiple task lists for projects to use as a desktop tool. Google Docs, very good to keep a lot of your documents, especially reference materials, using a Google Docs reference directory. Finally, let me introduce two specific applications that I like a lot. One is Smartsheet, and I encourage you, after today's webinar, you just spend 5 minutes clicking on these, going to these applications. So Smartsheet is a collaborative, web-based, like Excel-like tool that comes up with multiple sheets that you can use across virtual workplaces. And Smartsheet also has a Getting Things Done template that is available under its task and checklist type portals. Smartsheet comes with a lot of predefined templates for project management, collaboration tools. It is a free basic tool for the first couple weeks, as I recall, and as you want to expand the number of sheets, you pay for it on a basis as well. The next tool is Nirvana, Getting Things Done template. Again, if you look at this website, this is more a Windows type based tool for following the Getting Things Done process, where you can input tasks, next action steps, projects, follow-up action items, defer, calendar type events. Again, it's an initial free tool with a pay-for-use upscale, upcharge on it as you expand in it here. Okay. Let me just briefly introduce you to several workflow planning collaboration tools. Many of you may be familiar with these, but if you are in a client settings, again, I consider these part of workflow in the sense of sequencing process to get things done in a timely manner. Mind mapping, I'm going to show you in a little more detail, and then process mapping for those need to understand steps in a process. And a lot of times individuals know how to get there. I want to focus on the RACI matrix, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed matrix for cross-functional team roles and responsibilities. And finally, checklists are always a useful tool to remind people in complex or uncertain situations how to get things done as well, too. Here is a mind map of really one of the topics of today's webinar, time management. And again, this is good for initiating a conversation with a group of people as you're trying to scope out a topic or project to really visualize the information created around a single word or theme, which is placed in the center, and then concepts and categories radiate from the central node, and lesser categories have sub-branches. And it's a good way to kind of quickly visually organize a large topic which may set up the springboard for using things such as process mapping or a RACI matrix. All right. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed model. As many of you know, sometimes roles and responsibilities aren't clear, and you know, nothing erodes morale or performance faster than a difficult problem that belongs to someone else or sometimes to everyone. And you know, when these situations occur, it may be necessary to get a group of people together to sort out who does what. And one of the tools that I've used very effectively in many organizations, it goes by this acronym RACI, Responsible, Accountable, Consulted, Informed, where a group can really tackle problems directly. And you can see how you set this up, that you know, using a work breakdown structure or process map, you want to articulate you know, particular functions or processes that need to get to be done. And then you want to go across it and figure out, you know, the particular roles and positions that would do that task, not an individual's name. And really in the, you know, inside the matrix, you would have a discussion with the group about assigning levels of responsibility of who's going to do what. And again, you know, in terms of the definition, the terminology, the responsible person is the doer of the work. This is the individual. They may delegate or seek help from others, but this is the individual who's really going to be doing the work. The accountable person is really the individual, you know, responsible, making sure that the responsible person, you know, gets and does that work and signs off on it. And again, sort of the golden rule of a RACI approach is to make sure that there's only one person that can be accountable for each particular kind of functional task like that. Consulted and inform, and these are individuals or contributors that provide inputs, opinions, and advice, you know, through kind of one-on-one, two-way communication. And finally, you know, individuals that, although they're not contributors, they may need to be kept updated on progress or completion through one-way communication. And then you can find downloadable RACI matrices on the internet. Just Google it. They're in Excel. They're in other things. But again, a useful tool for managing workflow and project teams. So what next? What can you do with today's webinar? Well, let me suggest, you know, two things. Again, this is sort of this is an abbreviated overview of ideas. If there's things that you liked in here, you know, sit down and jot to yourself, try and develop a 30-day action plan. You know, review the webinar one more time. You may want to consider accessing and downloading Smartsheet or Nirvana to take a look at how you might use that. You may want to think about collecting all your stuff and begin placing it into buckets, organizational tools for that. May want to start using your email with flags and folders, or setting up recurring events on your calendar, for instance. You may want to begin to time block every day or your week, trying to do defined work to see how that helps you put things together. You may want to learn how to use Google Docs better, so take a tutorial on that, on things as well. Okay, and so when I teach this course, I ask people to set up, you know, what they're going to accomplish in the next 30 days and what they need help with. A couple kind of coaching points and suggested readings that have informed, you know, a lot of my thinking on this. First of all, and primarily, is Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity by David Allen. You can Google him. He's got his own website, his materials, classes. You'll see that the decision tree matrix is something that he has authored and is really the key nexus of his training. Another interesting book, Getting Things Done When You're Not in Charge. And this is useful when you're working with clients and junior staff who really aren't in charge in some of the issues that they confront with. For those of you who are thinking about, well, you didn't talk about procrastination, The Power of Habit, this book by Charles Duhigg that just came out in the last year, has a really good chapter about tackling things like procrastination, with ideas about understanding cues and behaviors and things that you can do to change some of the things that we default in behaviors. Finally, a new book out on focus, really exercising our attention and building the focus, by Daniel Goleman, who was involved in developing a lot of emotional intelligence training. and just some other books, The Slow Fix and the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. He's got some great thinking on using checklists with that. Great. Well, we're at the end of the formal presentation today, and if you have any questions, feel free to send them to me both on my Gmail account here or on the MBA website too. Right.
Yeah, we have the chat box or Twitter, and we do have a few questions. The first, Perry, is you were talking about how to leverage email and when it's the right medium to use. The question is, what are your thoughts about email collaboration? So a lot of emails, a lot of participants throwing ideas and thoughts and trying to get results through that medium.
Yeah. Good question, and we seem to be doing more multiple email collaboration. I really don't think it's that productive. I think it's much better to, ideally, if people are in the same location, to get everybody in the same place, and because of mainly one thing, and that is nonverbal communication. Behavioral cues that each of us can pick up by looking at one another that can help groups identify what the pain points are, what areas of consensus may be. With that said, clearly doing more collaborative type workflow in real time through webinars or other structured media may be helpful. But I think the email, by the nature of the way we communicate and abbreviating our words, our sentences, that there's no intonation, it makes resolution of issues, I think, very difficult, especially in a collaborative fashion.
Okay. Thank you. Another good question. What part of the day, and you mentioned something about early in the morning you're best at editing, but what part of the day is best to do the cleanup? Is it the end of the day or the start fresh next week, at the end of the week, and the start fresh on Monday concept? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. Part of this gets to I think your proclivity of whether you're a morning or an afternoon or evening person. I like to do the end of the day myself. So I have a roadmap of like closing out my day. I want to really close it out and get some mind like water, some serenity. So I want to make sure all my loose ends are tied up in document, that I know when I wake up in the morning I have a to-do list. And so at the end of the day I'll have a good sense of what I'm going to be doing the next day, until, of course, I get up at 6 a.m. and look at my emails overnight and stuff. And they're fewer and fewer. Typically, people don't send in many emails between midnight and 6 a.m. They come in more in the morning. But Fridays are big days for me, where I used to put on my calendar at 3 or 4 o'clock, time block, busy on my Outlook calendar. This is my time. It's sacred time for me really to do big picture items. And one of those is, again, a monthly view. And maybe I didn't really hit on this. So all of us have the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, and next week, by the way. And towards the end of November, to take a big look, pull up your December calendar, pull up your January and February calendar. Get a sense of how that first quarter moving into 2014 looks for big projects, travel, and then begin focusing on a week-by-week basis.
Okay. You mentioned when you try to get everything cleaned up by the end of the day, so you come in the morning with your fresh to-do list, and inevitably there's something on your email that draws your attention. Another question that we have is, how does one identify/manage distraction?
Yes. All right. Very challenging in this day when people working in cubes and shared offices and, trying to exercise selective attention on your focus, to focus on your activities. I think, again, sort of normative communication with individuals that sets up an expectation that, this is my quiet time, this is my time block to focus on something, people will begin to respect. It's interesting. I'm working more with clients and organizations that have set up in some of their business units, no one's allowed to email them between 8:30 and 10:30. This is an organization in their financial management unit. They have sort of a cone of silence. I've seen units that say no standing meetings are allowed to occur on Fridays anymore, trying to peel back those meetings. I coach people, many executives, you look at their calendar and they have death by meetings. They have meetings all the time. And so I ask them to proactively identify at least one meeting a month to stop going to. And then after that, another meeting to stop going to. And you'll be amazed that there are really a lot of things you don't have to be involved with. Back to your distractions, if you have a shared calendar that people can see, put busy on it for your quiet time. Feel free to, to have an out of office on your voicemail if you're getting a lot of calls for your quiet time. You may need actually to physically relocate yourself where there aren't distractions. And finally, you can get yourself a Bose of white nose headphones and hide.
All right. Great.
All right. Motto, we meet and talk it okay.
All right. Another question that came through pretty predominantly was, how do we get a copy of this presentation and maybe a recorded version of it? So that will be available on the MBO website, and all you'll have to do is click on our website, and it'll be emailed to you next week as well, so everyone will get that, and you'll be able to listen to a recorded version of this if you'd like also. Looking at the time now, I think we will probably wrap up. There's a lot of good comments on here.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just, if you want additional information or have additional questions, you can email us at info@mbopartners.com or visit our website at www.mbopartners.com. And you can follow us on Twitter. It'd be great if you did, and we appreciate that. It's at mbopartners.com, or I'm sorry, at mbopartners, and feel free to sign up for our monthly newsletter by emailing us at newsletter@mbopartners.com. I'm sure it won't be one of those things you want to unsubscribe to once you start reading it. There's a lot of good information. I want to thank you all for attending and thank Perry very much for a very informative session, and ask the participants to look for invitations to future websites that we're hosting here at MBO Partners.
Good. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's session, and best wishes for a happy and food-filled Thanksgiving next week.
Absolutely. Have a great day.